Chairman, we are now live.
Thanks very much. Good evening and welcome to today's meeting of the West Berkshire Council Governance Committee. I am Councillor Eric Pattenden and I will be chairing the meeting. Today's meeting is being held both over Zoom and with councillors present in the room. In addition to myself, the other members of the committee in attendance are councillors Howard Wollaston, Laura Coyle, Chris Reid and Louise Sturgis, councillors Dennis Bennyworth, who is expected, and Janine Lewis is also in attendance as substitutes for councillors Dominic Bowick and Jeremy Cottam, respectively. We also have Parish Council representative on the committee, Councillor David Southgate. Welcome, David, who is permitted to speak but not to vote on the items. Joseph Holmes, Judy Gillespie, Shannon Coleman-Slaughter and Catalin Pogos are the officers who will be advising the meeting. Ben Ryan is in attendance as the clerk and the Zoom host. If we hear the evacuation alarm this evening, we must leave the building immediately. Please proceed via the safe emergency exit route, which will be shown to us by the trained officers present. Please follow any instructions given by the trained officers present. The assembly point is the car park of the Dolphin Pub. So firstly, item 1, apologies. Clerk, have we received any apologies?
Yes, Chairman, we've received apologies from councillors Dominic Bowick, Jeremy Cottam, David Marsh, Owen Jeffrey, independent member Simon Carey, and Sophia Brown of Grant Thornton has also sent her apologies.
Thank you. Item 2, minutes of previous meetings. Members, are you willing to accept the minutes of the previous meetings as a true and accurate record? Or have any comments aiming at those who are there? Can I have a proposer and a seconder for the minutes of the special meeting held on 13th November? Councillor Reid, thank you. Councillor Sturgis, thank you. And also proposer and seconder for the minutes of the ordinary meeting held on the 20th of November. Councillor Wollaston, thank you. Councillor Reid, thank you. Can members indicate by raising their hand if they agree that the minutes can be signed as a true and accurate record? Thank you.
I'm abstaining on the first set of minutes as I wasn't present, but not the second.
Thank you.
Chairman, if I may, I was also not present at either meeting.
Thank you. So, despite all of that, the minutes of the meeting held on 13th and 20th November have been approved as a true and accurate record, and I will now sign them. So item 3, declarations of interest. Clerk, have we had any declarations of interest?
We have not received any declarations of interest.
Thank you. And from the floor? No, thank you. Item 4, forward plan. Officers and members, are there any amendments that you would like to be made to the forward plan? No? Okay, thank you. So forward plan as included is noted. Thank you. Item 5 is the internal audit report update Q2 2023 to 24. And Julie would like to introduce. Thank you.
Evening. So this is my usual update to committee on the work that's been completed for the quarter by the internal audit team and an update on work in progress. I think the key messages in the report are section 5.3, where I'm saying for this period, there are no corporate reviews that were given less than a satisfactory opinion. There was one school audit given a weak opinion, and that was mainly due to a number of recommendations to improve controls rather than significant gaps in the control. And the main area requiring improvement was in relation to the breakfast and after school clubs and how they record income and collection. The other point I wanted to highlight to committee is section 5.1, where during this period, we've changed our audit report categories. So how we give our opinions, they used to be based on 5 categories for controls. We've now reduced it to 4 categories, and they're based on assurance opinions. The wording has been changed, and we've also RAG rated them. And what they mean and the definitions are set out in section 5.1. This was to be more in line with good practice, where it's more assurance-based rather than controls-based. So yeah, that's the key message really. The tables on the completed work, because we changed the opinions mid-period, mid-quarter, then there's 2 tables there for giving the old opinions and the new opinions, because they weren't a direct match between the 2, so I've set them out separately. So that's basically the key message of the report, and you've got the usual appendices of completed work and work in progress and the fraud plan update attached. So if anybody's got any queries.
Councillor Reid.
Hello. Just a little bit on the, as you say, on the measurement with controls and assurance. I see that controls is part of assurance. Is that okay? So you're making it up.
It's just terminology, and it's I think the opinions we had before could be quite emotive. So we had very weak, which could come across more emotive than limited assurance. So I think and it's going along with good practice that's happening in other councils and other audit sections. So yeah, it's a different, we're given assurance opinions rather than control opinions, but the 2 are very directly linked.
Okay, and I noticed that risk management is taking part of that assurance as well.
Yeah.
Okay, that's encouraging. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? If not, recommendation is to note the report only, so no need to vote on it. In which case, we go to item 6, the financial mid-year 2023-24 midterm Treasury report. And Shannon, would you like to introduce?
Thank you. This is the standard mid-year Treasury report that comes to committee. It looks at the performance of the Treasury function as at the end of September 23. Your notes on 2.1, it states we have operated in accordance with the performance indicators that we approved as part of the investment and borrowing strategy for the current financial year. Key highlighted areas be 4.2 and 4.4. That basically sets out our long-term borrowing is reducing as we are following a strategy of short-term borrowing due to the high PWLB interest rates. This means we focus mostly on financing capital and liquidity ourselves, and hence you will see a reduction in our cash balances in 4.4. As I said, this is the midterm report, so that was as at the end of September. 5.22 is key because that looks at our minimum revenue provision policy, and it intends to replace that already adopted for the year. We have consulted with external advisors and have decided to recommend moving forward with the application of average PWLB rates, therefore generating in-year revenue savings of approximately £3 million.
Thank you. Members, any questions regarding this report? Councillor Wollaston.
Shannon, £3 million is an awful lot of saving. I'm delighted to hear it, but why have we done that in previous years in that case?
This was timely to have a review. We review every so often in consultation with our external advisors. We have new external advisors at the moment, so we took the opportunity to have a fresh look, and hence this was one of the options they came up with. One of the benefits of high PWLB rates is it does enable us to make the savings on the MRP side.
And are there any additional risks in going this route or not?
No, I have set out in 5.22 onwards. It is a change in policy. It does reflect the time value of money. We are still very much in line with other local authorities on their MRP provision. So it does not make us a council of concern to the government in any way at the moment.
Thank you. Joseph, you want to contribute that?
Yeah, just to respond to Councillor Wollaston as well. So the government, so DLUC, Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities, has created something called OFLOG recently, which is the Office of Local Government. And they've been putting out lots of comparative information out between different councils. And one looks at the amount of financing that's set aside, so MRP, and also the amount of debt under that the council has. And compared to other similar authorities, we have lower levels of debt, but higher levels of capital financing. So that was also why we reviewed it, because what actually, we are out of kilter here. Obviously very prudent, but quite happy to be with the pack as well.
Thank you. Any? Yes. David, go ahead. David, do you have a comment?
Is the plan to pay back the £10 million that's been taken out of the reserves at some later stage, or to just run in future with a halving of the reserve position?
Joseph, is that something you can comment on?
I can. In respect to the £10 million, can you just point me at
516, this is the thing that was said earlier in terms of you were basically funding the capex out of your reserves rather than getting loans.
I see. Yes. So, so thank you. And yet, linked to that, we have undertaken. So, if you look at the borrowing we've undertaken so far, we have fixed in effect all of that long term. So, we have a borrowing need, and we've undertaken external loans to finance that. We're moving more towards a blend of some short-term loans, so probably up to 20 to 25% of our borrowing requirement will be short-term and about 75% long-term. And the reason for that is where interest rates have gone up, we don't want to get caught on the wrong side of it. So we went out and borrowed everything externally now. It's highly likely, or the market thinks it's likely, that interest rates are going to drop. And I don't want to sit here next year and say, oh, we've just taken out £10 million worth of loans at 5.5%, and in a year's time, we think we'll probably be down at more like 4.5%, say. So we're taking out some borrowing short term so that we try to mitigate that risk, but we try to keep that balance. So I still think we need to be at least around the 75–80% externally borrowed. Otherwise, you are quite exposed to an interest rate rise.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, in which case we need a proposer and a seconder to approve the recommendations set out. This says page 23 of the report, but I think it depends which copy of the report you're looking at. I had it here a minute ago. Okay, yeah, Page 23, thank you. So that's to note the midterm Treasury position as detailed in this report. Section 151, officers satisfied that Treasury management practices in year have operated in accordance with the approved performance management criteria, and to approve the proposals for an in-year amendment perhaps to the Council's approved minimum revenue provision MRP policy. The current policy is included in Appendix C. Section 5.6 of this report details the proposal to move to applying MRP using the annuity methods and a weighted average life per financial year. Change in policy will generate a 3.2 million revenue saving in 2023-24. So anybody like to propose and second? Howard, Councillor Wollaston, thank you. Councillor Pennyworth, thank you. And can I ask all those in favour to raise their hand? That's carried. Thank you. So we can move then to item 7, investment and borrowing strategy financial year 2024-25. And Sharon, would you like to introduce the report?
Thank you. This is the investment and borrowing strategy for next financial year. It is one of the set of budget papers that will be going through to full council in February. The key area is probably 4.3 and 4.4. This sets out our borrowing levels and our maximum authorised limit, i.e. the maximum debt that we can enter into as an authority. And 4.4 shows, as Joseph noted on the last report, we are quite low compared to our limit on what we've actually borrowed, around the 186 million mark. The reason the boundaries are so high, it gives us more capacity for when IFRS 16, which is leases, comes on board next financial year, and to respond to any long-term financial pressures that the council may experience. A key element of this report states that we are not proposing to fully finance the capital strategy. We are setting the investment and borrowing strategy lower than the planned capital programme, and this is because we have made the proposal, which is also in this report, to start disposing of some commercial property to enable capital receipts and future capital financing from those capital receipts.
Thank you. Members, anybody have any comments or questions? Councillor Wollaston.
I can understand why operational property is not included within the directly owned property investment section. But for example, West Point House and the new residential purchases are not operational. Should they be included?
From the purpose of this report, the reason they are split out is because we have properties, the commercial property portfolio was directly financed by borrowing, whereas our standard other properties were not directly financed through borrowing. That is why they are separate in the appendices.
No, my question though is, should they not be an asset to West Berkshire Council?
They are an asset to West Berkshire Council.
But not mentioned.
But they're not mentioned in the specific commercial property portfolio. And in this one, they aren't classified currently as investment assets. They are classified as surplus assets at the moment.
Okay. Joseph, would you like to come in as well?
Yeah, it was just to make the exact same point that Shannon has. So in here, we're just looking at those which are commercial and investment properties that have been acquired for whatever, however they're required to make a return, whereas West Street were operation offices that don't make a return through what they are. Like where you're coming from, Councillor Wollaston, they are
an asset and they will be income generating. So I can't see why they wouldn't be included.
I think because we might have some other assets which generate, Shawhouse generates a bit of income, for instance, and so do other properties, but they weren't acquired on the basis that they were investment properties. They were acquired for a different purpose.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Sorry, I have one more, I'm afraid. On page 42, the second bullet point down says where the council receives a capital receipt from disposal of an asset previously acquired, and et cetera, that if I've read it correctly, that means that the capital receipt can then be applied to revenue, leaving still the need to repay capital and interest. Have I got that wrong?
Sorry, could you give me the paragraph reference, please?
It's not a paragraph reference, but it's on page 42 of the report, and it's the second bullet point down. So it's 42 on what the numbers under the report, and page 20 as well. It's showing on my top here is 46 of 108, if that helps.
Page 20. I'm just in the actual report. Page 20 of the actual report.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I'm scrolling. I'm not sure I can find. Can you read it? Read it to me again, and I'll respond.
Where the council receives a capital receipt upon disposal of an asset previously acquired through borrowing, the council may apply the receipt arising in year to offset the charge to revenue, either in full or in part, which would otherwise apply. In respect to the council's capital financing requirement, which pertain to the disposal, members are asked to approve use of this policy at change to allow use from and including the 2023 financial year.
Yes, so essentially what we're saying, when we receive a capital receipt, under our flexible use of capital receipts policy, we can apply that to transformation, which is revenue expenditure that is applicable against the flexible use of capital receipts policy, i.e. it enables transformation and can generate revenue savings. So we can therefore use a capital receipt against this particular nature of spend. Or alternatively, we can apply capital receipt to capital financing, i.e. substituting the need to enter into borrowing. That's essentially what that's saying.
Ask that the report then clarifies that, because it would appear otherwise that you could just put it against any revenue cost. I can quite accept transformation, but not the rest.
I can put some wording around clarification in the report, yes, to make that more clear.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so this report will be going to both executive and council. Consequently, there is no requirement to formally approve the recommendations, but just to approve its referral to those meetings, I think, subject to the alteration that we've just discussed. And now we can move on to item 8, risk management Q2 2023-24 report, and Kathleen to introduce, please.
Hello, thank you, Chairman. I'm Katalin Bogos. I'm the Performance Consultation and Research Manager for West Berkshire Council. I'm introducing this risk management report for Q2 to inform the committee about the actions taken to manage the risks on the corporate risk register. I will briefly comment on 4 aspects: the internal and external context, the risk movement, and the top risks. Before I start, though, for anyone watching online, I want to clarify what we're talking about in terms of terminology. Gross rating for a risk, we are talking about the rating of a risk without any mitigation in place. If we do nothing, that's the gross rating. The current rating is the rating at the time of reporting. So very important, this is as at the end of September, end of Q2. And this current rating takes into consideration the mitigation actions that have been put in place by the time of the reporting, not by today. And then the target rating refers to rating that we are aiming to achieve after we have managed to put in place any additional mitigation measures. Okay, so I will move on to the first point, internal context, and second point, external context. The Council has adopted a new Council strategy in October. And as we define the risks in relation to the agreed objectives, and of course, as we agreed objectives that we wanted to be smart, measurable, and achievable. There is, as a consequence, I suspect, very little movement in terms of the risk exposure from Q1 to Q2. Another point of context, the National Risk Register was published, updated by His Majesty Government, and the report is highlighting to officers and to portfolio holders about the availability of this more up-to-date version of the National Risk Register, so they can take into consideration information from there on risk assessment. There is a link in the report for the regional risk registers, Thames Valley Local Resilience Forum community register. And thank you to Councillor Reid for pointing out to us that when trying the link recently, is not working. And that is because from the point of publishing this report and today, there was an update of that risk register, which I'm going to reflect probably in the next report. So we consider information. 3 more points quickly. 2 more points. One significant issue that we have we had at the time and still have was the cost of living challenges, and there are some links in there about the national context, including some actions taken by the government to support the more vulnerable people entitled to some types of benefits. And then internal information shows performance information shows that the demand has increased for the duration of last year and into this financial year, Q1 and Q2, in particular around the social care, children and adult social care. Then moving on to the second point, we have one new risk escalated on the risk register, and that's primarily reputational risk as we classify them. Then we show in the report that mitigation action has reduced the rating from gross rating to the current rating at the point of reporting for the majority of the risk on the corporate risk register. We have 5 risks as an exception where we tolerate them at the same level as the gross rating because by the time of reporting there was limited action available. There are no increases on current rating from the rating at the end of Q1 to the rating at Q2, this rating with mitigation action in place. And then in the appendices, we are showing a diagram with where the risks are positioned on the risk matrix. To conclude, and what is very important, and the purpose of this report here for this committee, to provide assurance that the risks on the corporate risk register have been updated for Q2. There are links being made with the new council strategy and the objectives and priorities in this new strategy. Mitigation action is put in place and reduce the gross rating to a new current rating for most of the risks, and also they prevent increasing risk, the current risk rating from one quarter to another. New risks are being identified. One escalated for this quarter, and there was no risk de-escalated during the quarter. And if now or in the next session, I will be happy to take questions.
Thank you. Members, any questions at this stage? No? Oh, Councillor Wollaston.
Minor point, but looking at Appendix C, the corporate risk register heat map, it does look very red.
Yes, I can explain that, Madam Chairman. So in the council, we have a system of ensuring that each risk is owned and managed and controlled by a service, and they are on a service risk register. And then if you access our risk management strategy, which is published on our website, we have a system of escalating the higher rating risks. There are criteria in the risk management strategy. We escalate them from the service risk register to directorate risk registers. And these are the risks with the highest ratings and risks that we officers, risk owners, consider it's important to be highlighted for awareness when they have slightly smaller rating, lower rating. And then from the directorate risk register, some of the risks, the highest ratings are escalated onto the corporate risk register that you are looking at now. So it will be expected that most of the risks on the corporate risk registers are the highest rating risks, the red rating risks from the entire list of risks that the council is managing. So that's why it's more red. We don't put, if we put all the risks that we are managing in the council, probably you'll have a lot in the green, a few more in the amber, and a few comparatively lower number on red. But this is only the tip of the iceberg, the most significant risk, so the red risks.
But Captain, there's nothing we should be worried about. There's nothing that sort of flashes horrible lights at you.
Well, in terms of what is flashing horrible red light is we are reporting in here one risk that is red top ratings 16 4x4, and it is a financial risk that is highlighted here as part of the report.
Thank you. And I think those risks have been there for a little while. So, Councillor Reid.
Cannot hear.
Sorry, I did send you an email beforehand, just because this happens to be my hobby and also my job. I was just wondering if we could have a graph of how the risks are trending in future reports, if that's possible. I don't know if we've got software that can be able to pull that. It's interesting to see if they're trending up or down, especially not only the gross risk, but the mitigated risk as well.
Yes, we do have a software which integrates risk with performance and with project management. And in there, certainly, you'll be able to see the trends from one period to another. Now, we only implemented this system last year, so we will not have a lot of historic information yet in the system, but it will be able to be accessed as we move from one quarter to another, risk by risk.
Brilliant. Thank you. If I can, obviously cybercrime is a particular worry to public authorities, especially with Hampshire Emergency Services, who were taken out for a number of weeks, and the British Library a number of months. I'm guessing in combination with audit on the controls there, the mitigation controls on how we would respond to a cyber, especially a ransomware attack, is much because they're pretty much certain to get through to a lot more local authorities. Whether they get reported or not, I suspect we do have to report them. But that would be, I think, something the council should be looking at, is a ransomware response strategy, as well as controls to try and defend against it.
If I may, our approach here at West Berkshire Council is not to discuss about the specifics of the risk in part one of the session. We'll have opportunity to discuss some aspects in part two, if that is necessary, when the chairman decides us to move us into part two. So
I think the rest of my questions are part two. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Councillor Southgate, go ahead.
Hi, good evening. We are currently in, is it Q4?
Yes.
So in terms of using risk management as a forward tool to manage risk, are we reporting like 6 months out of date here? I appreciate those are the risks as they stood at Q2, but do we use this as sorry, and you may have told me in the past, but do we use this as a tool going forward to actually manage our future risk, as opposed to essentially Q2 is risk that has gone and we can't do anything about that because that's history.
Yes, I can respond to the chairman on this question. So we are bringing the risk management report to the governance committee for assurance. We are not asking the governance committee to manage risk or to help us to manage risks, or one risk or another, or we are bringing the report here to ask the governance committee to approve and agree that there is to have assurance, that they see assurance that the risk management process is happening and it's sound. And we are asking the committee to judge this by sharing the information that we share with decision makers internally, corporate board, management, and external and members arena, operations board, members of the executive. So we are asking you to note what is happening, to compare what is happening with what we are saying that should happen in the risk management strategy, and to be satisfied, or indeed not, to highlight if you have concerns, that the risk management process is functioning as it should in order to provide assurance and to keep the organization safe and to help us to be more likely to achieve our priorities and outcomes. That's what we are doing in this forum. This forum is not necessarily to go into particular risks and how we manage particular risks and so on, unless that is just to understand the process behind it, and to as I said, to compare with our published risk management strategy. And you get the assurance about the risk management process through this report, but also through everything else that you are seeing as members of this committee, audit reports, financial reports, and so on, plus some of the members of committee as members of the full council, West Berkshire Council, as well. They are receiving a lot of other information in there, and members of the public can read it and so on because it's publicly available. So by combining this report and everything else that you are hearing, the point of me being here every 6 months is to provide you with that assurance and understanding what is happening with risk. Now, there is a time lag between end of Q2, which is end of September, and January, about a few months, 3 months and a half maybe. And what we are doing, because we implemented, and this is part of the assurance that I'm going to give you now, because we implemented this risk management software combining with performance and project management, decision makers, so the people that are responsible to manage the risks, their managers and portfolio holders, they have now access to the risk information almost instantly after it has been updated. It does not require risk manager like me to bring it all together and to publish it to them and so on. They have now 24/7, as soon as it's the end of the quarter and the risk has been updated by the risk owner, they have the individual risk and the combined picture for all the risks. So that's why I'm not overly concerned that we have a bit of a time lag between the end of the quarter and the report reaching this forum. Yes, we are trying harder to bring it back closer to the end of the quarter, because maybe advantage is that things are fresher in the memory, what happens and so on. However, there is a little bit of another kind of advantage. If you see the risk report after a few months, you have the benefit of looking and understanding what happened since then, and say, have they predicted the future reasonable based on what they knew at that point in time, or how come they managed to fail to notice this, and that's the part of assurance. So I managed to find something positive on a bit of a delay, but no, we will try always to bring it sooner rather than later.
Thank you. Councillor Coyle, go ahead.
Hi, Kathleen, thank you. I'm sorry if this is a stupid question. It's my first governance committee meeting, and unlike Chris, I don't know anything about risk management, but I just, on the de-escalation side, I just wanted whether you have any targets for the number of risks. I appreciate they're many and varied and change all the time, but for how many you might be aiming to de-escalate over a particular period. Just noting that there haven't been any that have de-escalated in the last part of the last quarter. I just wondered what you look at in terms of that. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you very much. You are making a very good point and a very good question that I note now, and I will discuss with the chairman and the colleagues in the organization about the training for the members of this committee. So you will be fully aware of the council's approach to risk management, because then you'll be able to challenge and ask questions and so on to contribute to the assurance process. So we don't have a target how many to de-escalate or how many to escalate. Our main purpose with the risk management is to make sure that we do identify risks, to make sure that they are on our radar, and to make sure that we keep them on the radar for as long as they pose a significant threat to us achieving our objectives. Yes, of course, we want to reduce the risks and to make it even more safer and more safer to be able to achieve the objectives. But that is also linked to trying to keep the balance between how much effort, money, time, resource you put to mitigate risks versus what is the impact of the risk, and we need to have that balance right. But you are right on the high level risks. We do want, if at all possible, to reduce the rating and to put more mitigation in if it's feasible to do so. We don't have a target though, but we have for each of these risks, we have targets that we want to achieve to put in additional mitigation and to achieve those new targets.
Thank you. Members, any other points? Okay. As the recommendation set out page 43 is to note the report only, no need to vote. We now go to item 9, which is exclusion of press and public. I'd like to ask members to agree by voting that the press and public leave the room in accordance with Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. All those in favour, raise hands. Thank you. Ben, can you let me know when public have left and live stream has ended?
The live stream is now ended.